One of the things that's been notable, of course, very recently, Philip, has been we've had a central bank willing to be kind of out of step with what other banks were doing. While other banks were easing, ours either stayed on the sidelines or was even raising. What does that take? What kind of sort of fortitude does it take for a small economy like Canada's to kind of go on its own on policy in that way?
Well, I think it's actually quite consistent with what Poloz will be known for during his monetary policy regime, which is devaluing the currency. They're pretty obviously trying to keep the currency around 75 cents. That's largely where it's been ever since the oil price crash in 2015. But the sad fact of the matter is it just hasn't worked. They've been waiting for a pickup in growth and particularly a pickup in manufacturing exports for 4 years now, and it just hasn't happened. And yet they keep pursuing the same policies and hoping that there'll be a different result.
So from that point of view, when we think about potential successors here, now we know that it could be anybody from anywhere. Stephen Poloz came from a different part of the government. But in this case, there is a deputy at the bank who is standing ready to step into the shoes. Would it be a mistake for the bank to, that would be kind of, I guess, a steady as she goes appointment? You would imagine that there would be a similar kind of a viewpoint if Carolyn Wilkins was made governor?
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, very much the problem, that governors tend to surround themselves with deputy governors who are in agreement with them. There's no problem with that. But that's why we haven't seen a deputy governor appointed. I think going back to the days of Gordon Thiessen might be the last time that happened. As you noted in your introduction, the Harper government appointed Poloz, so I think it's natural the Trudeau government is going to try to put its own stamp on the Bank of Canada, and they'll appoint their own person, which means they'll likely go outside the bank. There's been a lot of speculation the last couple of times that it would be an interim promotion, and every time the government's gone outside, so I don't think there's any reason for that to change.
Meanwhile, I want to just drill into the data today. We know the StatsCan Labour Force survey is just that. It's a survey, and because of the way that it's collected and the emissions in it, it can be obviously a little unreliable, I guess we could say. Having said that, we do report it month after month, and it's collected the same way. So in a way, there's at least some kind of there's some continuity in the unreliability. What does the data say today about what we're looking at?
Well, this survey, as you say, has been kind of off the rails most of the year. I mean, most of the signals we've been getting from the economy is that the economy is very sluggish, just chugging along, a little less than 2% growth. And yet we've consistently all year had pretty good jobs numbers, much better than you would have expected given GDP and hours worked and all these other variables. And usually when one major indicator is out of line like that, my experience at StatsCan was that indicator will realign itself over time with the other indicators. And I think that's what we're starting to see with this employment report. Employment's coming back to where you would expect it to be given GDP growth. Now we're in the last year, we've had GDP up 1.7%, employment 1.8%. That's pretty much what you would expect. So I think a lot of the weakness is just a reversion to the mean, if you'll pardon the statistical expression. But I think, too, it also reflects that we're probably in for a very difficult fourth quarter here in Canada. We had late snows hampered the harvest. We had a CN rail strike. GM's going to close a factory in Oshawa in December. The end of the federal election knocked 25,000 jobs out in November. So I think it does signal that we're going to have a very difficult fourth quarter in this country. We
did get, of course, today very strong numbers south of the border, including wage growth numbers up north of 3%. Does that bode well for Canada? We're so reliant on that economy. Can we, at least as the silver lining today, say that our biggest trading partner seems to be doing pretty well?
Very much so. I mean, and that's something we should remember. We're going to see some probably pretty poor numbers coming out of the Canadian economy in the fourth quarter. But before people start worrying about a recession, the good performance of the U.S. economy puts a floor under which we're probably not going to fall. It would be not unprecedented, but very unlikely that Canada would fall into recession unless the U.S. slid into one as well. And these very good job numbers in the U.S. suggest that the U.S., yes, they've slowed down from their 3% growth last year, but they seem to be leveling off at about 2% growth, which is still a pretty good rate.
All right, not a ton of time here, Philip, but a non-economic question. But we do have some new weird tension between our leader and and Donald Trump coming out of NATO. We have yet to see the new NAFTA ratified. Is trade still an issue out there that we need to worry about for our economy?
Certainly. I mean, given the amount of debt we've accumulated during the Poloz years, we're very vulnerable to either an interest rate hike or a downturn in the global economy. So more than ever, we need continued steady access to the U.S. But that isn't enough either. We have to do more with our free trade agreements. We have to be productive and creative and competitive in our other policies and innovative in our business strategies if we're going to make trade work. Just signing free trade deals, we've got one with Europe, we've got one with Japan, we've got one with Korea, we've got one with the U.S. We've got lots of free trade deals. We've got to make it work. And as I say, manufacturing exports have stalled over the last 3 years. So we've got a lot of work to do.